A slew of controversy and claims of a toxic work environment. Now Maryland's top educator says he won't seek a second term. The relentless investigations from Fox 45 News Project Baltimore that led to this point. Little to no solutions from state lawmakers on how to crack down on youth crime.
Can you really be specific about exactly what needs to change?
Our team presses the governor for answers. Plus, we question your state leaders on the apparent lack of urgency as youth violence continues to surge. The City Council crime bill targeting juvenile crime that was abandoned.
It would have put the community and our political leaders on the same page.
New tonight, the shocking reason why it was thrown out.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
We have breaking news out of Southwest Baltimore where 2 teenagers have been shot. The crime scene is in Hollands Market near James McHenry Elementary School. Baltimore police tell Fox 45 the victims are a 14-year-old girl and 17-year-old boy. We don't know their conditions. Police say both are in the hospital. There's no word on a suspect at this time. Again, a 14-year-old boy and a 14-year-old and 17-year-old shot in Southwest Baltimore.
A shakeup tonight in the future of education in Maryland. Current Superintendent Mohammed Chaudhry withdrawing his request for a second term, a move that comes after relentless investigation by our Project Baltimore team on transparency issues. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maxine Stryker.
And I'm Kai Jackson. Now, this development comes after the Board of Education delayed a vote on Chaudhry's contracts.
We have team coverage tonight. Chris Papps reports on the transparency issues leading up to today. But first, Jeff Abel has the latest with reaction.
Test scores off his website, heavily redacted them, and then reposted them. A move that kept parents and taxpayers from seeing how poorly some schools are performing.
Mr. Chaudhry.
That decision by MSDE sparked backlash. But when we tried to question Chaudhry about it,
Test scores on the website,
he locked himself behind a door.
We're asking for the resignation of this individual, this state superintendent.
This week, in light of all of Project Baltimore's findings, 3 Republican lawmakers took a strong stance, calling on Chaudhry to resign immediately.
This I pondered for months, taking this stand, but we need, because of our children.
I think the toxicity of his leadership and the fact that so many people are leaving the education system is a good indicator that he's not the right person for the job.
In the wake of Fox 45's findings, the Attorney General, State Prosecutor, and Inspector General for Education had all been called on by lawmakers and special interest groups to launch investigations into the superintendent's actions. And with time running out before the state board was set to make a decision, Governor Wes Moore, a Democrat, also came out strong this week when asked about Project Baltimore's reporting.
I want transparency, I want accountability, and I want a superintendent that believes in it and can deliver it.
Moore, who has repeatedly said he has no control over the state school board's decision to offer the superintendent another contract,
as well as
did have a strong opinion on Chaudhry's performance.
The results we're seeing right now are not satisfactory results, and I demand better, and we need to make sure that we're getting better results for our kids.
Now, just 5 days after the governor said he demands better, Chaudhry announced he will withdraw his request for a second contract as superintendent.
6% of the students were...
Project Baltimore has reached out to the state school board, asking when parents and taxpayers can expect more transparency. The transparency the governor and other lawmakers demanded. And we're asking whether MSDE will reverse course on its decision from earlier this year to heavily redact state test scores. As we receive updates, we'll pass them on to you. I'm Chris Pabst, and this is Project Baltimore.
You can trust Fox 45 News to keep you up to date on the process to choose the next superintendent. Fox 45 News and our Project Baltimore will keep pushing for accountability and transparency.
From education to crime, today Fox 45 News questioned Governor Wes Moore on what needs to be done to address a rise in youth crime.
Needs to be changed. I know you said that there needs to be accountability, but what does accountability look like in terms of these laws?
Yeah, well, I work in partnership with the legislature, and I know that the laws that they're looking at adjusting right now, these are laws that were passed before I became the governor. And so the adjustments to the laws that were passed by the legislature need to be adjusted by the legislature.
Well, this week there was a special hearing on new laws that are dividing prosecutors, police, and lawmakers. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost breaks down the pressure building for something to change.
It's time to break all of this down from the accountability desk. We were in Annapolis earlier the week for the House Judiciary Committee hearing. The hearing itself was held virtually, and the State House echoed with emptiness. And the conversation took 5 hours. There was a lot of questioning, but not a lot of talk about real action. And now the pressure is building for lawmakers to do something. This is Delegate Lou Clippinger. He's the chair of this House Judiciary Committee, and he's a delegate from Baltimore City. And he listened to a presentation from the Department of Juvenile Services Secretary Vincent Schiraldi. Secretary Schiraldi's been on the job for about 7 months or so, and remember, has some of his previous policy ideas, like the possibility of keeping people 25 years old or younger out of the adult criminal justice system, raised some questions during the confirmation process about whether he was the right guy for the job. But he cleared the confirmation hurdle and now is seeing some support among some liberal lawmakers. I want you to hear some of the comments that Secretary Schiraldi made during the hearing about juvenile crime.
Youth crime is down over the last decade by half. As juvenile incarceration has declined, so has juvenile crime.
But that's not what prosecutors from around the state are saying about the reality in their own areas.
This legislation has put our children at risk, our communities at risk, and the entire state at risk of extreme chronic violence.
And the statements of the secretary about the falling numbers in terms of juvenile crime that's not what we've seen here in Montgomery County. If you actually compare the numbers between 21 and 22, we have nearly doubled the number of arrests in 22 than we had in 21.
Even Chairman Clippinger raising questions about the validity of the DJS data.
I'm not sure it's because there has been a drop in juvenile crime. I think the numbers have simply dropped because in many cases, police officers have not brought charges in many cases.
So the split among lawmakers and some people on the front line seems to be growing. Here are some of the questions that we're asking Secretary Schiraldi. What do you say to prosecutors who claim crime is not going down, rather it's increasing? Are the prosecutors wrong? Does the data show crime is declining because kids 13 years old and younger are no longer facing charges for these nonviolent misdemeanors? And in Baltimore City, more than 7,000 cars have been stolen this year alone. Do you believe kids 13 and younger should be formalized within DJS for stealing a car? We'll let you know if we get any answers from Secretary Schiraldi. And that brings us to another split that's forming in the State House. This is Senate President Bill Ferguson. He's a Democrat from Baltimore City. And here's House Speaker Adrian Jones, another Democrat, but from Baltimore County. And these two are critical. Remember their names and faces because they are two of the most important people in Annapolis. And these two are facing pressure from parents, police, and prosecutors to do something to bring more accountability into the juvenile justice system. But right now, it's not clear what exactly they're going to do. I tried to question Speaker Jones, but she walked away. Here's part of that interaction. Do you believe that kids using guns in crimes is a problem that the House will address in January?
The Judiciary Committee will be dealing.
As Speaker, though, do you think that it's something that will be a priority?
The Judiciary Committee and all our committees, all their priorities,
We're asking several questions to Jones and Ferguson as well. Here's some of them. This is the big one that everyone has been asking lawmakers. What specific plans do you have to address the rise in juvenile crime that communities all across Maryland are seeing right now? This question is very important as well. We're asking these two legislative leaders, the leaders of both chambers in the General Assembly, how do you respond to people who say this, meaning the current juvenile justice laws, threaten the safety of all Marylanders? We'll keep you posted on what they have to say. Now, there will be another hearing in November. This time, that conversation will take place in person, but it's still unclear if there will be any plans these lawmakers will talk about that could result in any change, especially with the General Assembly session beginning in January. At the Accountability Desk, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Rebecca Pryor will have more from Governor Wes Moore at 10:30.
Coming up on Fox 45 News at 10 o'clock tonight, new developments in the upcoming federal trial of former city state's attorney Marilyn Mosby, the condition Mosby wants before she takes the stand. New tonight, a Baltimore City Council bill addressing youth crime is abandoned just before the Brooklyn Day mass shooting. Fox 45 News is pushing for accountability.
I'm tracking the next chance for showers following a beautiful couple days. I'll let you know the timing of the rain and when dry weather returns coming up.
Today marks 60 years since the infamous bombing at the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. We'll take you there, where the event that propelled the civil rights movement is being remembered. Well, it was baseball night in Baltimore. You're looking at live pictures from Camden Yards. The light's still on, but the O's taking on the Tampa Bay Rays for the second game in a four-game stand. The O's fell to the Rays again tonight. Rocco DeSangro will join us in 20 minutes with a wrap and a preview of the weekend games.
And speaking of the weekend, Hurricane Lee expected to bring some dangerous rip currents to beaches along the East Coast. You're looking at conditions this afternoon down in Ocean City. If you are headed down the ocean, brace for some rough surf.
The first hurricane watch in 15 years has now been issued for portions of Maine before Lee. A large swath of New England is under a tropical storm watch or warning, and residents are getting ready.
It can get pretty hairy. Lines stretch out a lot, boats start loosening up. It only takes one to break free and start bouncing around and causing a lot of damage.
The White House says FEMA has staged resources across New England.
Let's bring in meteorologist Jasmine Lomax now for our first check of our weekend forecast here. Jasmine.
Well, it looks great here, but if you are heading to Ocean City, those rip currents certainly something you may have to deal with. And that's all as we continue to track Hurricane Lee as it moves north. Now, it's still well away from our coast, but it's still going to lead to high surf. That's what you see for many of those areas in purple. And notice those alerts go all the way up the coast and into New England. The red indicates a tropical storm warning, and that's where there could be some heavy rain and gusty winds. Notice we are looking at quietly weakening before making landfall, possibly along Nova Scotia, staying to the west of Halifax. Now, this will likely happen late tomorrow. As it continues to move north, it'll start to weaken, especially once it enters the open Atlantic and the cooler waters of the northern Atlantic. Coming up, I'll have a closer look at what you can expect here and when we'll have our next chance for rain and my full forecast. Back to you.
Former City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby's defense team lays out some new requests to the judge in her federal trial. They're asking to limit possible arguments from the prosecution.
And that includes limiting how they refer to the 2 vacation homes in Florida at the center of this case. The defense does not want prosecutors to refer to them as luxury. On Fox 45 News at 4, we spoke with defense attorney Kurt Nachman about what Mosby's team is asking for.
The question becomes whether or not some of the terminology that the government may try to use would be overly prejudicial or unduly prejudicial to Ms. Mosby, referring to it as a luxury property. But they don't just ask for that in their motion. They're asking to exclude pricing, pictures, descriptions of the homes purchased in Florida, any appraisal reports, any other documents that she sold the one Kissimmee home for a substantial multi-$100,000 profit. They want to exclude all of that information.
In that court filing today, Mosby's team also says she'll testify in the perjury trial as long as the judge approves limitations on what the prosecution can ask her. Mosby is facing 4 federal charges, 2 for perjury, 2 for making false statements on mortgage applications for those 2 homes in Florida. There will be 2 separate trials, 1 for the perjury charges, 1 for the false statement charges. Those will take place in Greenbelt starting next month. You can find more on today's filings on our website right now at foxbaltimore.com.
For the first time in more than 100 years, Texas could impeach its attorney general. The allegations facing Ken Paxton.
United Auto Workers are on strike. I'm Atrell Nashar with why President Biden is walking a fine line between supporting unions and limiting the strike's impact on the economy.
Back now with the Fox 45 Quad Box. The impeachment trial of Texas Attorney General is now in the hands of a Senate jury. Fellow Republicans accuse Ken Paxton of corruption and abuse of power. Paxton maintains the impeachment is political.
A Michigan jury acquits 3 men connected to the 2020 plot to kidnap that state's governor. They were the last of 14 to face charges in state or federal court. 9 others have been convicted.
TikTok has been fined nearly $370 million by the European Union over the privacy of children. The video sharing app is accused of allowing children under 13 to use the app in settings that make their accounts public by default. TikTok says the fine is excessive and it's already fixed those issues in 2021.
The nation marks 60 years since the deadly Birmingham church bombing. 4 girls died after members of the Ku Klux Klan planted dynamite beneath the 16th Street Baptist Church in 1963. Today, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, the first black woman to serve on the U.S. Supreme Court, spoke during a commemoration.
We cannot forget, because the uncomfortable lessons are often the ones that teach us the most about ourselves. We cannot forget because we cannot learn from past mistakes we do not know exist.
The bombing received national attention and amplified the civil rights movement.
History is playing out in front of our eyes. For the first time, workers are striking against 3 major car companies.
And it's expected to have a big economic impact on the auto industry and the country. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar has the story.
We are the union! We are the union!
The very first United Auto Workers strike against all of the big 3 car makers, Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis. It's a strike that in just 10 days could cost the economy $5 billion, according to consulting firm Anderson Economic Group. In 2019, GM UAW workers went on a strike that lasted 40 days, which GM says cost them about $3 billion. But it's a very different economy now than it was in 2019. High inflation is keeping consumer sentiment low. New car prices are about 3% higher than they were a year ago. Supply chain disruptions from a strike could only make that worse. The president has been in contact with all negotiating parties, but it's a delicate balance for Biden, who's long said this.
And I'm proud to be the most pro-union president.
The UAW endorsed Biden in 2020, but hasn't said yet if they'll back him in the 2024 race. The president now sending 2 members of his administration to Detroit to assist negotiations.
Let's be clear. No one wants a strike.
He says record corporate profits should result in record contracts for the UAW. Democratic Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, whose district is just west of Detroit, wants the president to stay out of the talks.
I do not believe that the Biden administration should intervene in these strikes or these discussions in any way.
Opposite calls coming from industry. Chamber of Commerce CEO Suzanne Clark.
We do think the Biden administration has got to keep both parties at the table.
Clark later called the strike a natural result of the Biden administration's whole-of-government approach to promoting unionization at all costs. Raising the political stakes even higher for the president is the heart of the auto industry being in battleground Michigan. A hit to local economies there could sour voters in this purple state. Biden won by about 150,000 votes in 2020. And in 2016, former President Trump won by fewer than 11,000 votes. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar reporting.
A bill introduced here at City Hall to address youth violence withdrawn just days before the Brooklyn Day mass shooting. I'm Vincent Hill. Coming up at 10:30, how that happened and what's next for that bill.
Breaking news, 2 teens shot this evening in West Baltimore. The breaking details coming in.
And a crisis looming across the nation, a decline in nursing home facilities at a time when the need is rising. The push to get something done.
We have breaking news out of Southwest Baltimore where 2 teens have been shot. The crime scene is in Holland's Market, right by James McHenry Elementary School. Baltimore police tell us the victims are a 14-year-old girl and 17-year-old boy, but we do not know their conditions right now. Police say they are both in the hospital, but no word on a suspect. Again, a 14-year-old and 17-year-old shot this evening in Southwest Baltimore.
Late last night, 2 people were shot by Lexington Market. City police responded to West Saratoga Street around 11 o'clock. A 35-year-old man and 26-year-old man have been shot. They were taken to the hospital where we're told the 35-year-old died. The other victim is stable. Anyone with information about the shooting should contact police.
New tonight, a bill to address youth violence in Baltimore City was in limbo for a year before being withdrawn by the city council.
That happened just days before the Brooklyn Day mass shooting. Fox 45's Vincent Hill spoke with the council member who sponsored the bill.
Councilman Robert Stokes calling it a mistake, but some say it's a mistake we can't afford here in Baltimore because of the juvenile crime crisis.
The Addressing Youth Violence in Baltimore City bill, introduced by Councilman Robert Stokes in June of 2022, would have brought agencies like Baltimore Police, the state's attorney's office, and Mosby all to the table, working on the same plan to combat youth violence.
Youth violence and school violence is still going on. It was an important hearing, it's an important bill.
But just 5 days before the Brooklyn Day mass shooting, the bill became unimportant at City Hall.
It was an honest mistake.
Withdrawn from the City Council's agenda, Councilman Stokes says he forgot to send the bill forward.
At certain parts of the year, if any bill or resolution you have, the president's office asks you, do you want to keep it? If you don't want to keep it, it dies. I kept all of them. I don't know how that one got past me, but that one got past me.
Hundreds of males and females are armed with guns and knives at the location.
It's unfortunate that because of a procedural error that a bill of that nature didn't proceed.
That honest mistake is something Euripsy Morgan with the group Peace says can't happen in Baltimore.
We're in the community. We hear from residents who know and feel and see every single day that there is an increase in youth violence, and it almost feels like we're having to convince politicians and elected officials that this is real.
Morgan says maybe the outcome of what happened in Brooklyn may have been different if the bill had moved forward.
But now to know that there was a bill in existence last year that reflected what the community was already saying, I think that's the difference that it would have made it, is it would have put the community and our political leaders on the same page.
Meanwhile, Councilman Stokes is working to fix his mistake.
That's important to me, that's important to people in Baltimore. So I will be reintroducing it again because youth violence is important.
Now Stokes says he plans to reintroduce that bill in an upcoming city council meeting. In Baltimore, Vincent Hill, Fox 45 News.
On Wednesday, lawmakers and prosecutors expressed their frustration about juvenile justice laws during a special hearing. State's attorneys are taking issue with 2 laws, including the Juvenile Justice Reform Act, which prevents children under 13 from facing most criminal charges.
I recognize the motivations and reasons why these changes were made. I am in sympathy with them, but I think there will be certain things that were done that I don't think that necessarily people understood the consequence of what they were doing.
When we only talk about quote unquote accountability, which is now becoming the code word for locking up black and brown children, we're only speaking to what the problem is.
A second hearing is set for November.
And following a hearing on the juvenile justice laws, many eyes now shift to the state's top official for his stance on the issue. Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor presses Governor Wes Moore on what changes he's calling for.
It's a promise he has yet to back up with a plan. The governor has been quick to guarantee these changes, but had little to say when asked what these changes will be. Following hours of heated debate,
we need to stop making excuses for these kids.
They just kind of cycle through the system.
At a special hearing in Annapolis Wednesday, Governor Wes Moore pledging to listen to parents, police, and prosecutors who argue out-of-control juvenile crime
they see no reason to stop committing crimes
is not getting the attention it needs from lawmakers.
To make sure that the laws are going to both make sure that these repeat violent offenders, that there has to be measurements of accountability. You can't just get right back on the streets.
But when asked what changes he's calling for specifically,
we're going to work in partnership with the legislature.
Moore dodging the details.
And I think that his voice is missing on this.
According to political analyst John Deedy,
when you put your ideas out there, the public sees more of a sense of urgency because you're stepping up to the plate.
Moore's vague response to Maryland's struggling juvenile justice system missing the mark amid a wave of young people continuing to commit and fall victim to crime.
Put the marker out there saying, this is what I want done, instead of letting the legislature do it.
Today, Fox 45 pressing for clarity on what action Moore plans to take. Can you really be specific about exactly what needs to change?
Yeah, well, I know the legislature is working on it now, and you have to work in partnership with the legislature because some of the laws they're talking about adjusting are laws that were passed before I became the governor.
As the governor now, though, you lead the legislature. So what exactly about these laws do you think needs to be changed? I know you said that there needs to be accountability, but what does accountability look like in terms of these laws?
Yeah, well, I work in partnership with the legislature. And I know that the laws that they're looking at adjusting right now, these are laws that were passed before I became the governor. And so the adjustments to the laws that were passed by the legislature need to be adjusted by the legislature. But they know we are working very closely with them to make sure that the adjustments that need to be made are going to be made.
But again, what adjustments he believes need to be made remain unclear.
I think the response is sad.
Despite growing demands for those adjustments to arrive right now.
He's letting the Maryland General Assembly lead instead of him leading. And I think he should be the leader on this.
The governor also holds the power to call a special session, which would bring lawmakers back to Annapolis right now to address this issue. But the governor has repeatedly said he has no plans to do so. In the control room, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
In Baltimore, the number of auto thefts continues to climb. In the first full week of September, more than 300 people were victims of auto theft. Alexa Ashwell reports.
Victim, they just hopped out the car and just stole it. And the way they did it, they looked like pros.
After victim, the wheel was the whole ignition was completely towards the dash, on really high up. The seats were completely laid back. All the windows were broken. After victim,
the dude sped off in my car. That's when I found my uncle laying on the ground.
And then there's some here in Baltimore simply waiting their turn.
It's not a matter of, hey, if my car will be stolen. No, it's when.
The city largely blaming the spike on a TikTok trend, prompting juveniles to hotwire Hyundais and Kias. But they're not the only cars being targeted. So far this year, there have been 7,401 car thefts reported across Baltimore, according to the latest statistics provided by Baltimore police. That translates to more than 28 cars a day. The statistics also show the majority of these criminals are getting away with the crime. Of the more than 7,000 car thefts reported, the data shows there have been 221 arrests, nearly half of them juveniles. That's less than 3%. No, I have no idea who took it. I have no idea what happened to the people that took it. Police say those arrested are often right back out on the streets, and prosecutors argue laws in the books are roadblocks to holding young people accountable.
It's very frustrating. You have officers doing their job, risking their life. You have victims who struggle to make the car payments, struggle to pay the insurance, doing what they can, and here comes a young kid, a child, stealing their car because it's a game. They think the system will hold that child accountable, but it's not happening.
The frustration prompting some Maryland lawmakers to call the head of the Maryland Department of Juvenile Services to the table. Meanwhile, dozens of people each day finding themselves out hundreds, in some cases thousands of dollars, and without a car.
It's frustrating, I have to go through all this other extra financial situations with this.
A local economist warns it's only a matter of time before the city ultimately suffers.
When your car is stolen, to you, that's major. And people respond accordingly. If they have their car stolen, they move. They don't renew their lease. They don't buy that house in the first place, whatever it happens to be. So the economic impacts are major.
Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
And again, if you have a car stolen story or know someone who's been impacted by the spike in auto thefts, we'd like to hear about it. Scan that QR code on your screen and tell us what happened, or send us an email at foxbaltimore.com.
That brings us to our question of the day. Are lawmakers out of touch when they call car thefts a property crime? To make your voice heard, head to foxbaltimore.com/vote.
Well, new information after a fire at a tire lot in West Baltimore, which lasted for hours this morning. Officials say that fire started around 1:30 at a manual tire and auto repair on Moreland Avenue. Neighbors were told to stay inside because of the toxic fumes coming from burning rubber. Now, of course, it's safe to be outside. No one was hurt. The cause, however, is under investigation.
If it wasn't for Paxton Street, I'm not sure what my brother's life would be like.
A crisis developing around the nation as the need for nursing homes grows. More of these facilities are closing their doors. The reason why and the push for a solution.
They have no money. They don't know where to sleep. How are they going to get food?
More than 10,000 people have been killed in Libya following devastating flooding. Next, the latest on rescue efforts as the United Nations warn of more desperation on the horizon.
And we are getting ready for another gorgeous fall day tomorrow with highs in the low 80s. But then we have the next chance for showers on Sunday. We're back to dry weather on Monday. I'll break down the timing of the rain in my Weather Authority forecast.
Fox 45 News, winner of 16 2022 Regional Emmy Awards, more than all other Baltimore news stations combined.